Everyone walks around thinking they know people. But the truth is, the human mind operates on invisible frequencies. It follows patterns buried so deep that most go their entire lives never seeing the machinery that controls them. Before we dive into what separates those who understand from those who just guess, smash that like button and subscribe, because the psychology you're about to learn will permanently change how you read every person you meet. 1. Talking to yourself out loud isn't a sign of losing your mind, it's a sign of sharpening it. When you speak your thoughts into the air, your brain doesn't treat it like internal noise that can be ignored. It registers your voice as external input, as commands that demand attention and action. That's exactly why world-class athletes whisper to themselves right before a crucial play, why surgeons verbally walk through each step of a delicate procedure, why chess masters mutter their strategy during tournaments. It's not insecurity leaking out. It's the brain activating a higher level of focus by turning thought into sound. You become both the coach giving instructions and the player executing them. The voice creates a feedback loop that forces clarity. Silence keeps ideas vague. Speaking makes them real. 2. Messy handwriting is often the signature of a mind moving faster than the hand can follow. People look at illegible scribbles and assume carelessness or lack of discipline, but the reality is usually the opposite. It's thought outpacing the physical body. The brain is generating ideas, connections, and solutions at a speed the hand simply cannot match. What appears chaotic on paper is actually the evidence of mental velocity. A messy page doesn't belong to someone who doesn't care. It belongs to someone whose mind refuses to wait for ink to catch up. The scrawl is the skid mark of a brain moving at full speed. 3. Negative words strike the nervous system with far more force than positive ones ever could. An insult will loop in your head for days while a compliment fades by evening. That's not a character flaw or a sign of weakness. It's evolution carved into your neural wiring. For tens of thousands of years, survival meant being more sensitive to threats than to rewards. Missing a kind gesture might hurt your feelings, but missing a warning could end your life. The brain learned to prioritize danger over comfort. That's why a single harsh comment from a stranger can overshadow a dozen compliments from people who love you. Your mind is still scanning for predators even when you're sitting safely at home. 4. Multitasking doesn't make you efficient. It temporarily lowers your IQ. People wear the ability to juggle tasks like it's a medal of productivity, but the neuroscience tells a darker story. Every time you switch from one task to another, your brain has to reboot. It's not a seamless transition. There's a cognitive cost at every toggle. The result is a measurable drop in sharpness and processing speed, equivalent to pulling an all-nighter or being mildly intoxicated. You think you're accomplishing more, but in reality, you're bleeding focus and draining mental energy faster than you realize. Far from being a superpower, multitasking is a slow leak in your intellectual capacity. 5. Doodling during a meeting isn't distraction, it's a secret memory enhancer. When someone sits and idly sketches shapes or patterns while listening, they're not checked out. They're actually more engaged than people sitting perfectly still. The act of keeping the hand busy occupies just enough of the brain's restless energy to prevent it from wandering off entirely. It anchors attention, giving the mind a light task so it can focus deeply on the information coming in through the ears. Studies show that doodlers recall significantly more details from conversations and lectures than those who try to force rigid attention. The scribbles on the page are silent tools sharpening memory in real time. 6. Your heart can trick your brain into confusing fear for love. The rush of adrenaline pumping through your chest feels nearly identical whether it's triggered by terror, intense exercise, or romantic attraction. That's why someone you meet on a roller coaster, during a scary movie, or in a high-stakes situation can suddenly seem irresistibly magnetic. The pounding in your chest creates arousal, and your brain, searching for an explanation, attaches that feeling to the nearest face. It's called misattribution of arousal. Your body is screaming with energy, and your mind decides the person standing next to you must be the cause. Sometimes what feels like chemistry is just your pulse lying to you. 7. Mirroring someone's body language is your subconscious confessing that you like them. When you're drawn to a person, your body begins to subtly copy theirs without you even noticing. They cross their legs, you cross yours. They tilt their head, you tilt yours. They lean forward, you lean forward. It's rapport being built beneath the surface of awareness. Your brain does it automatically to signal safety, to communicate that you're on the same wavelength. It's your nervous system whispering, "I feel comfortable with you, I'm in sync with you." This mirroring happens in friendships, romantic connections, even in negotiations. The body speaks a language the mouth never learns. 8. Quiet people aren't empty. They're observing on a level most never reach. While talkers fill the room with sound, the silent ones are reading faces, watching gestures, catching the micro-expressions that flash and vanish in milliseconds. Their stillness isn't absence, it's presence distilled into focus. Silence sharpens the senses. It allows the mind to process layers of communication that drown under the noise of constant speech. The quiet ones aren't missing the conversation. They're understanding it more deeply than anyone speaking. They see not just what is said, but what is hidden, what is avoided, what is true. 9. Rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. When someone ignores you, excludes you, or shuts you out, your brain lights up in the exact areas that register a punch to the gut or a hand on a hot stove. To the mind, social pain is identical to bodily injury. That's why loneliness can feel so crushing, it becomes hard to breathe. It's not melodrama, it's survival circuitry screaming that isolation equals danger. For most of human history, being cast out of the tribe was a death sentence. Your brain still treats rejection like a wound because, in evolutionary terms, it was one. 10. The average person lies between 1 and 2 times every single day. But most of those lies aren't elaborate schemes or evil manipulations. They're small protective shields. "I'm fine. I'll be there in 5 minutes. I totally remember that." They're tiny acts of social lubrication designed to keep interactions smooth. The truth is, lying is rarely about malicious deception. It's about managing the sharp edges of reality so nobody gets cut. Most lies are fragile attempts at preserving peace, not calculated betrayals. Honesty has a cost, and most people can't afford to pay it constantly. 11. Chewing gum legitimately sharpens mental performance. That small, repetitive motion increases blood flow to the brain. It boosts alertness, quickens recall, and tightens focus. That's why students chew gum before exams, and soldiers carry packs in the field. The rhythm of chewing creates a rhythm in thought. It's not superstition, it's physiology. The jaw's movement wakes the brain up, keeps it engaged, prevents it from drifting. Something as simple as a stick of gum can be the difference between clarity and fog. 12. People who stay calm in chaos were often forged by fire early in life. What looks like natural composure is frequently survival instinct learned young. Those who grew up navigating unpredictable households, volatile parents, or constant instability often carry a strange stillness when storms arrive. Their nervous systems already know the battlefield. Panic is familiar territory they learn to walk through without flinching. Peace for them was never a gift, it was a skill trained under pressure. That eerie calm isn't confidence, it's muscle memory from surviving what would break others. 13. Exhaustion can actually unlock creativity in ways rest never does. When you're slightly tired, the brain's usual filters start to loosen. The rigid guardrails of logic weaken, and unusual ideas slip through the cracks. That's why your best thoughts sometimes arrive at midnight, on a napkin, or in the shower after a long day. Fatigue removes inhibition. It lets the brain wander into territories it normally polices. The strange idea you dismiss in the morning might have been genius whispered by a tired mind that finally stopped censoring itself. 14. Dark humour is a reliable signal of emotional resilience. Laughing at painful, tragic, or taboo subjects isn't cruelty or insensitivity. It's psychological armour. People who find comedy in darkness often carry stronger emotional defences. It's how they survive reality's unbearable weight without being crushed. To laugh at the dark is to refuse to let it win. It's defiance disguised as a joke. The ability to mock suffering doesn't mean you don't feel it. It means you've learned to stand in it without collapsing. 15. Men and women often carry different cognitive strengths shaped by evolutionary roles. Women frequently excel at juggling multiple streams of information simultaneously, while men tend to dive deeply into singular focus. It's not about superiority or inferiority. It's about different survival strategies, carved over millennia. Women historically managed children, gathered resources, tracked social dynamics all at once. Men often hunted, requiring tunnel vision and sustained concentration on one target. These patterns left imprints. The brain still carries echoes of roles that kept the species alive. Neither is better. Both are vital. 16. Most people drastically underestimate their own attractiveness. When you look in the mirror, you magnify every flaw, the slight asymmetry, the scar, the imperfection nobody else notices. But others see you in passing, in motion, in moments where you're not dissecting yourself. They see your laughter, the way you move, the light in your eyes when you talk about something you love. Attraction is rarely about perfection. It's about energy, presence, authenticity. The odds are strong that you're far more magnetic than you've ever allowed yourself to believe. The mirror lies because it shows you through the cruelest lens, your own. 17. Night owls are natural-born rebels. People who stay awake long after the world has gone dark often question authority more frequently, resist social norms, and think independently. The night has always belonged to those who don't fit neatly into the daylight structure. Late hours breed a certain kind of freedom. It's not just preference, it's personality wired for pushing boundaries, for resisting the collective rhythm. Night owls don't just prefer darkness, they thrive in the space where rules loosen and convention sleeps. 18. Visualization rewires the brain almost identically to physical practice. When you close your eyes and vividly imagine playing piano, shooting a basketball, or delivering a speech, the same neural pathways light up as if you were doing it in real life. The mind rehearses, the body listens. That's why elite athletes, surgeons, and performers dedicate time to mental repetition. It's practice without movement, but with profound power. The brain doesn't fully distinguish between imagined experience and real experience. Visualization is training compressed into thought. 19. People with smaller social circles often prioritize depth over quantity. They're not antisocial or incapable of making friends. They've simply chosen intimacy over noise. Their circle may be small, but each connection is layered, tested, unshakable. For them, friendship isn't measured in numbers. It's measured in meaning, in trust that doesn't need maintenance, in conversations that never feel shallow. A single deep friendship carries more weight than dozens of surface-level acquaintances. Quality eclipses quantity every time for those who understand connection. 20. Writing down your worries before bed is one of the most effective tools for better sleep. The page becomes a container for the looping thoughts that would otherwise spin through your head all night. Instead of recycling anxieties endlessly in your mind, you anchor them to paper. The result is a calmer nervous system and the ability to let go. Sleep welcomes those who unload their mental burdens first. The act of externalizing worry signals to your brain that the problem is handled, at least for now. Rest becomes possible once the weight is transferred. 21. Talking to strangers daily even briefly, significantly boosts happiness. A smile exchanged with a cashier, a quick chat with a neighbour, a nod to someone passing by. These micro moments of connection feed the social brain in ways isolation never can. Humans are wired to engage, even in small doses. The happiest people aren't the richest or the most successful. They're the ones who remain open to the tiny sparks of interaction scattered throughout ordinary life. Strangers aren't obstacles, they're opportunities for brief, life-affirming connection. 22. Silence makes people deeply uncomfortable because it forces self-reflection. We fill the air with chatter, not because silence is empty, but because it is unbearably full. Silence is a mirror that reflects back everything you've been avoiding. Most people cannot stand what echoes in the quiet, so they drown it with words, music, notifications, anything to avoid sitting alone with their own thoughts. The loudest noise is often the one inside your head. Silence doesn't need filling, it needs courage. 23. People who swear frequently are statistically more honest. Profanity bypasses the polite filters most people use to soften reality. Raw words emerge from raw truth. When someone curses, it's often a signal they're speaking without a mask. The lack of self-censorship in language tends to correlate with a lack of deception in content. Strange as it sounds, swearing can be a badge of authenticity. The mouth that refuses to sanitize its words often refuses to sanitize its truth. 24. Music with lyrics actively hijacks your focus. Your brain is forced to process both the words in the song and the words in your task simultaneously, creating cognitive interference. That's why instrumental music, classical, ambient, lo-fi beats, all enhance concentration, while pop songs with lyrics pull your attention in competing directions. It's not about taste or preference, it's about bandwidth. Lyrics occupy the same mental space as language-based work. Instrumentals leave that channel open. 25. Couples who laugh together consistently stay together longer. Shared humour isn't just entertainment, it's relational glue. Every inside joke is a private language, proof that two people see the world through a shared lens. Laughter releases bonding chemicals. It diffuses tension. It builds a rhythm that keeps two people in sync, even when life gets hard. Comedy isn't trivial in relationships. It's foundational. Laughter is love wearing a smile. 26. High empathy can feel like a physical wound. Mirror neurons fire when you witness someone in pain, lighting up your brain as if the suffering were happening to you. That's why deeply empathetic people physically flinch when they see someone hurt. For them, compassion isn't just an emotional choice, it's biology. They feel the world more intensely because their nervous system refuses to build walls between self and other. Empathy has a cost, and highly empathetic people pay it constantly. 27. Daydreaming is the brain's hidden problem-solving mode. Letting your mind wander isn't laziness or distraction, it's strategy. When your attention drifts, the brain runs background simulations, tests hypothetical scenarios, connects disparate ideas. That sudden flash of insight, the aha moment, often arrives after daydreaming, not after grinding. Creativity doesn't come from forcing focus. It comes from releasing it and letting the subconscious work. 28. Chasing happiness directly makes it run faster. The more you pursue joy as a goal, the further it slips from your grasp. Happiness resists being hunted. It arrives indirectly. As a byproduct of meaning, growth, connection, purpose, joy isn't a prize you claim. It's a side effect of living well. The people who find happiness aren't the ones chasing it. They're the ones building lives worth living and discovering joy already present in the process. 29. Walking pace predicts life expectancy. Speed isn't just about hurry, it's about vitality. People who naturally stride with energy, who move through space with momentum, tend to have healthier cardiovascular systems and stronger overall health markers. Every step is a small clue to how long life may stretch. Pace reflects internal systems functioning at full capacity. The faster you walk without strain, the longer your engine is likely to run. 30. Memory isn't a recording. It's a rewrite. Every time you recall an event, your brain subtly edits it. Details shift based on current mood, new information, or the context in which you're remembering. Emotions reframe facts. Over time, your memory of something may bear little resemblance to what actually happened. The past isn't a video file you replay. It's a story you retell, and each retelling changes it slightly until the memory becomes something entirely new. 31. Overthinking is the curse that comes with intelligence. Sharp minds cut both ways. The ability to analyze deeply, to see multiple possibilities, often spirals into paralysis. What should be a gift becomes a trap. Thought turns into endless loops. Intelligence solves real problems brilliantly, but it also creates imaginary ones just as effectively. The smarter you are, the more ways you can find to doubt yourself. Overthinking isn't stupidity, it's intelligence turning on itself. 32. Compliments light up the brain's reward centers more powerfully than money. Validation, recognition, and genuine praise trigger dopamine surges that cash simply cannot match. For many people, being seen and appreciated fuels more lasting joy than financial gain ever could. The human brain, despite living in a material world, still values belonging and acknowledgement above wealth. We are social creatures first, economic ones second. 33. Hearing your name cuts through noise like an alarm bell. When someone uses your name in conversation, your brain instantly locks in. Attention sharpens. Instructions, requests, emotions, they all gain weight and urgency. The name isn't just a sound, it's identity being activated. That's why skilled communicators use names frequently. They know that a name spoken aloud commands focus in ways generic address never can. 34. The color blue physiologically calms the nervous system. Sky, sea, horizon. The shade signals safety and peace to the brain. Blue lowers heart rate, reduces blood pressure, and soothes restlessness. That's why hospitals, bedrooms, and meditation spaces so often use it. The brain reads blue as the absence of threat, as open space where danger is visible from far away. It's not cultural, it's biological. Blue is the color of calm hardwired into perception. 35. Emotion burns memory into permanence. Neutral days fade into fog, but moments soaked in love, fear, grief, rage, they carve themselves into the mind with brutal clarity. Your brain is selective. It doesn't waste energy recording the mundane. It reserves permanent storage for experiences that carried emotional weight. Memory isn't fair or balanced. It dramatically favors intensity over routine. The ordinary evaporates, the extraordinary stays forever. 36. Boredom is not emptiness. It's your brain starving for challenge. That restless itch, that crawling dissatisfaction. It's hunger for stimulation. Your mind needs engagement the way your body needs food. When boredom strikes, it's a signal that you're underusing your cognitive capacity. The cure isn't distraction or numbing, it's challenge. Boredom is untapped potential screaming to be activated. It's a resource, not a void. 37. Powerful people initiate touch more often. Leaders, CEOs, dominant personalities, they're the ones reaching out first. A hand on your shoulder, a pat on the back, a guiding touch on the arm. Physical contact establishes hierarchy without words. It's a silent claim of status and territory. The person who touches first often holds the power in the room. Touch is permission and dominance coded into a gesture. 38. Sadness sharpens judgment and critical thinking. When you're down, your brain shifts into a more analytical mode. You notice details others miss. You question assumptions more rigorously. Happiness makes you generous with logic and willing to overlook flaws. Sadness makes you precise, skeptical, thorough. Melancholy isn't just suffering. It's the mind turning up its resolution to understand what went wrong and how to avoid it next time. 39. Procrastination is fear pretending to be laziness. The task you keep avoiding isn't boring, it's threatening. Maybe it represents the possibility of failure. Maybe perfectionism has made starting feel impossible. Maybe deep down you're terrified of not being good enough. The delay isn't about poor time management, it's emotional avoidance. You're not lazy, you're protecting yourself from a feeling you don't want to face. 40. Introverts mentally replay conversations long after they end. While extroverts move on to the next interaction, introverts stay behind, dissecting what was said, how it was said, what they should have said differently. It's not insecurity, it's processing. Their brains need time to fully digest social data. The mental replay isn't torture, it's the way they extract meaning and prepare for future encounters. Analysis is their form of recovery. 41. Guilt is the price you pay for having a functioning conscience. If you've never felt crushing guilt, you've likely never deeply cared about your impact on others. Remorse is proof that your moral compass works, that you have values and you know when you've violated them. People without guilt aren't free or liberated. They're disconnected from consequence. The weight you carry after doing wrong is evidence that your humanity is intact and functioning. 42. Your handshake carries decades of conditioning. A firm grip often signals confidence built in childhood by supportive authority figures. A weak, hesitant handshake can reflect early experiences with people who crushed self-esteem. The way you extend your hand, the pressure you apply, the eye contact you hold, it's all biography compressed into 2 seconds of physical contact. Handshakes aren't just social rituals, they're unconscious confessions of how you were taught to meet the world. 43. Gossip is tribal intelligence gathering. Talking about people who aren't present isn't purely pettiness, it's social mapping. You learn boundaries, values, expectations, and dangers through stories about others. Gossip spreads faster than verifiable facts because survival has always depended on knowing who to trust and who to avoid. It's information warfare older than written language, and it's still one of the most effective ways humans police behaviour and maintain group cohesion. 44. Smiling when you're sad can actually trick your brain into feeling better. The muscles in your face send feedback signals upward to your emotional centres. It's called facial feedback theory. Your face doesn't just express what you feel, it participates in creating what you feel. Sometimes, you have to lie to your face to begin healing your mind. The body can lead the emotions when the emotions refuse to follow logic. 45. Decisive people aren't necessarily smarter or more informed. They're just less afraid of being wrong. Hesitation often masquerades as wisdom, but frequently it's just fear of regret. Quick decision makers have trained themselves to tolerate mistakes. They'd rather move forward imperfectly than stand still flawlessly. Speed isn't recklessness when you've made peace with the fact that wrong turns are part of every journey. Decisiveness is courage, not certainty. 46. You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Their habits seep into yours. Their beliefs subtly reshape your thoughts. Their energy sets your emotional baseline. It's not mysticism, it's mirror neurons running constantly in the background, copying patterns, matching rhythms. Your circle doesn't just influence you, it constructs you. Choose your 5 like you're choosing your future, because in many ways, you are. 47. Chronic complainers physically rewire their brains toward negativity. Every complaint strengthens neural pathways that scan for problems and flaws. Over time, the brain begins to default toward finding what's wrong. It becomes automatic, reflexive. Complaining feels like healthy venting, but neurologically, it's training. You're teaching your brain to see the world through a lens of dissatisfaction. The more you complain, the more reasons your brain will find to keep complaining. 48. Eye contact held longer than 7 seconds crosses a threshold. It either becomes intimate or aggressive. There's no neutral space beyond that line. Hold someone's gaze past 7 seconds, and something fundamental shifts. Either connection deepens into vulnerability, or tension rises into confrontation. The eyes are too honest for prolonged contact to remain casual. 7 seconds is the edge where comfort ends and something more intense begins. 49. The more choices you're given, the less satisfied you become with your decision. Abundance breeds paralysis and regret. Too many options mean you'll always wonder about the paths you didn't take. Freedom without limits isn't liberation, it's anxiety. The paradox of choice shows that sometimes less is genuinely more. Satisfaction doesn't come from infinite options. It comes from boundaries that make decisions bearable. 50. Your body language speaks before your mouth opens. Crossed arms signal defensiveness. Feet pointed toward the door reveal a desire to leave. A turned shoulder communicates disinterest. People read these signals faster than they process words. You can control what you say, but your body confesses constantly. Micro-expressions flash across your face in fractions of a second, leaking truth that you didn't give permission to share. The body never learned to lie as skillfully as the tongue. 51. Forgiving someone doesn't mean forgetting what they did. The brain stores betrayal and pain in deep memory even after conscious anger has been released. You can let go of the need for revenge and still remember the lesson learned. Forgiveness is for your own peace, not their absolution. It's cutting the rope that ties you to their mistake so you can walk forward freely. You forgive to free yourself, not to erase history. The scar remains as wisdom. 52. Laughter creates bonds stronger than shared beliefs. When you laugh with someone, oxytocin floods both brains simultaneously, chemically locking you together. Inside jokes become tiny fortresses only you and your people understand. Comedy is connection chemistry. That's why couples who laugh together weather storms better. Why friendships built on humor last decades. Why the funniest person in the room often has the most loyal following. Laughter isn't trivial, it's relational infrastructure. 53. Staring at screens before bed destroys your sleep architecture. Blue light tells your pineal gland that the sun is still up, crashing melatonin production. Your circadian rhythm breaks. Deep sleep becomes inaccessible. That phone in your hand at midnight is a tiny sun tricking 30,000 years of biology into thinking dawn is approaching. Your ancestors slept when darkness came. Your screen makes darkness impossible. The body can't adapt to what it was never designed to handle. 54. People with chronically messy desks often possess more creative, non-linear minds. Chaos on the surface reflects cognitive flexibility beneath. They see connections others miss precisely because their environment doesn't force rigid categorization. That pile of papers isn't disorganization. It's a visual map of an active mind making unconventional links. Order is comfortable. Disorder is often where innovation begins. 55. The silent treatment is a form of emotional violence. Ignoring someone activates the exact same neural regions as physical pain. It's punishment delivered without leaving visible marks. Withdrawal of presence, of acknowledgement, of basic human recognition, it's one of the cruelest tools in the interpersonal arsenal. Silence isn't neutral. It's aggression refined. It wounds deeper than shouting because it denies the target even the dignity of a fight. 56. Revenge feels intensely satisfying for about 90 seconds, then regret moves in permanently. The brain's reward system fires when you strike back, delivering a hit of righteous dopamine, but it fades almost instantly. What lingers is the uncomfortable knowledge that you lowered yourself, that you let someone else's actions dictate your behavior. Revenge is borrowed satisfaction, paid back with permanent consequences. The cost is always higher than the reward. 57. Your music playlist reveals personality traits more accurately than most psychological tests. Aggressive, high-energy music correlates with extroversion and physical vitality. Melancholic ballads map to emotional depth and introspection. Complex jazz and classical preferences signal openness to experience and intellectual curiosity. The soundtrack of your life is simultaneously the signature of your inner world. Music choice is personality made audible. 58. Hugging someone for a full 20 seconds releases oxytocin and reduces cortisol. That's the threshold where a polite gesture becomes physiological medicine. The longer embrace tells both nervous systems that safety is present, that connection is real. A quick hug is social courtesy. 20 seconds is nervous system recalibration. It's the difference between a greeting and actual comfort. 59. Morning people and night owls have structurally different brains. Early risers show more white matter in regions tied to sustained focus and generally report higher baseline optimism. Night owls have denser neural connections in areas associated with creativity, risk tolerance, and nonconformity. It's not about discipline or lifestyle choice, it's neurology. Your internal clock isn't something you choose, it's something you're born with. 60. Anxiety is your brain attempting to predict and prevent danger that doesn't exist yet. It scans the future obsessively, running worst-case scenarios on an endless loop. It feels like preparation, like you're protecting yourself through vigilance. But worry doesn't empty tomorrow of its troubles. It empties today of its strength. Anxiety is energy spent on ghosts, on possibilities, on maybes that will likely never materialize. 61. Kind people have measurably stronger immune systems. Compassion isn't just a moral virtue, it's medical intervention. Acts of generosity reduce inflammation markers, lower blood pressure, decrease stress hormones, and correlate with increased longevity. Cruelty corrodes the body from the inside out. Kindness is self-care disguised as service to others. Every act of compassion you extend outward strengthens your biology inward. 62. Your posture directly influences your emotional state and confidence levels. Stand tall with shoulders back, and your brain receives neurochemical signals of power and capability. Slouch with chest collapsed, and your mind registers defeat and submission. The body doesn't just express emotion, it generates emotion. Power poses aren't theatrical. They're biochemical hacks that shift your internal state within minutes. 63. Unpredictability is one of the most potent sources of chronic stress. The brain desperately craves patterns because patterns mean safety. When life becomes random and chaotic, anxiety spikes regardless of actual danger levels. Routines aren't boring. They're stabilizing. Predictability gives your nervous system permission to relax its vigilance. Even positive unpredictability creates stress. The body doesn't distinguish. Chaos exhausts, even when it's exciting. 64. Secrets corrode you from the inside with measurable physiological cost. Holding hidden truths activates stress circuits continuously. Your body pays a metabolic price for every lie of omission, every withheld confession. The secret becomes a background process consuming energy constantly. Confession isn't weakness, it's release. The truth might hurt acutely once. The secret hurts chronically forever. 65. Hope is a decision, not a spontaneous feeling. You actively choose to see possibility even when current evidence suggests otherwise. Hope is defiance against probability. It's refusing to let circumstances dictate your expectations for the future. Optimism isn't naivety or delusion. It's strategic. The brain performs better, endures longer, and recovers faster when it believes in a viable future worth working toward. 66. Loneliness fundamentally alters perception and cognition. Isolated people begin to interpret neutral faces as less trustworthy, hear benign comments as hostile, and expect rejection, even from well-meaning strangers. The disconnected brain enters a threat detection mode, where the world becomes dangerous by default. Loneliness isn't just an emotion, it's a perceptual filter that distorts reality. The cruel irony is that loneliness makes connection harder to find and accept. 67. Practicing gratitude creates measurable changes in brain structure. Listing 3 things you're thankful for daily strengthens neural pathways that scan for positive information. It's not toxic positivity or denial. It's rebalancing a brain that may be stuck in threat mode. The depressed or anxious brain defaults to scanning for loss and danger. Gratitude is the manual override that slowly trains it to also register gain and safety. 68. Your favorite childhood memory is statistically likely to be at least partially false. Repeated retellings reshape events each time. Family stories replace actual experience. Photographs convince you that you remember moments you only saw documented later. Memory is collaborative fiction created between what actually happened and what you've been told happened. The past you remember may bear little resemblance to the past that occurred. 69. Crying is physiological detoxification, not emotional collapse. Emotional tears carry stress hormones out of the body that other forms of tears don't contain. Sobbing is your nervous system purging accumulated tension. The profound relief that follows crying isn't weakness breaking, it's pressure being released. People who never cry aren't stronger, they're dammed up, and eventually that pressure finds another, often more destructive, exit. 70. You cannot actually multitask. You can only rapidly switch between tasks while doing each one poorly. Every toggle between activities costs cognitive resources. The brain pretends it's doing many things simultaneously, but it's actually performing one thing inadequately over and over in quick succession. What feels like efficiency is cognitive bleeding. Real productivity comes from single tasking. Deep focus on one thing is mastery. Scattered attention is the illusion of accomplishment. 71. Touch starvation is a real physiological condition with serious consequences. Humans need regular physical contact to regulate their nervous systems properly. Without it, cortisol levels rise, mood destabilizes, immune function weakens, and the world begins to feel hostile. A society increasingly mediated by screens is creating an epidemic of untouched people slowly forgetting how their bodies calm down. Touch isn't luxury, it's biological necessity. 72. Waiting and anticipation increase the perceived value of rewards. Delayed gratification doesn't just build character, it makes outcomes genuinely feel better. That's why anticipation often provides more pleasure than the actual event. The wanting phase fires dopamine harder than the having phase. Patience isn't punishment, it's a value amplifier. The longer you wait for something meaningful, the sweeter it becomes. 73. The nickname given to you in childhood shapes your identity in profound ways. Labels become prophecies. Called sensitive, you learn to feel deeply and became attuned to emotion. Called troublemaker, you learn to resist authority and question rules. Called the smart one, you built your worth around achievement. Names aren't neutral. They're instructions whispered consistently until you internalize them and begin performing the role assigned. 74. Happiness has a biological set point that's remarkably resistant to change. Even lottery winners return to baseline mood within months. Even people who experience tragedy gradually drift back toward their starting emotional range. The brain adapts to joy the same way eyes adjust to brightness. Chasing permanent happiness is chasing a biological impossibility. Peace isn't found in sustained peaks. It's built through consistent practices that honor your natural range. 75. Silence after conflict matters more than the apology itself. Words are cheap and easily performed. Time spent sitting together without speaking, allowing presence to do the work that rebuilds trust. Staying proves commitment more powerfully than promises ever can. The repair isn't primarily in what you say, it's in the fact that you didn't leave. Presence is the apology the body believes. 76. Your brain completes other people's sentences before they finish speaking. You predict words based on linguistic patterns absorbed over decades. That's why interrupting feels natural and why it's so hard to truly listen. Real listening isn't waiting for your turn to speak. It's actively suppressing your prediction engine to allow someone else's thoughts to arrive unmolested. Genuine listening is rare because it requires overriding one of the brain's automatic functions. 77. Fear and excitement are chemically identical. The label you assign to the physical sensation determines the subjective experience. Reframe terror as thrill, and your body responds differently to the same neurochemical cascade. The shaking, the rapid heartbeat, the heightened alertness, all of it is neutral until you interpret it. You can't control the adrenaline. You can control the story you tell yourself about what it means. 78. The most dangerous lies are always the ones you tell yourself. Self-deception is invisible because you occupy both roles simultaneously, the liar and the believer. You can't catch yourself in the act of deceiving yourself. That's why outside perspective is invaluable. Other people can see the contradictions, the rationalizations, the convenient forgetting that you've trained yourself to ignore. You need others to see what you've made invisible to yourself. 79. Meaning sustains where happiness fails. People endure extraordinary suffering if they believe it serves a purpose larger than themselves. Meaning provides fuel that pleasure can never supply. That's why parents sacrifice sleep for years, why activists risk safety, why artists tolerate poverty, why soldiers endure war. Purpose is the substrate beneath action. Joy is weather. Meaning is climate. One fluctuates, the other sustains. 80. Bitterness is just disappointment that's been allowed to ferment. What starts as hurt or unmet expectation, if left unprocessed, hardens into resentment. Bitter people aren't fundamentally different. They're people who never metabolize their pain. The disappointment calcified instead of dissolving. Bitterness is grief that was never given permission to be felt fully and released. It's emotion that got stuck halfway through processing. 81. Curiosity is the most reliable predictor of lifelong learning and adaptability. Intelligence is static potential. Curiosity is kinetic. It's the engine that drives exploration, growth, and resilience. Curious people remain teachable regardless of age. They update their beliefs when presented with new information. They ask questions instead of defending positions. Curiosity isn't childish wonder. It's mature openness to being wrong and therefore becoming wiser. 82. Comparing yourself to others is neurologically inevitable, but psychologically destructive. The brain is a social organ built to assess relative status constantly. You can't turn off comparison. You can only choose your reference group carefully. Compare yourself to billionaires, and you'll feel inadequate. Compare yourself to your past self, and you'll feel progress. The comparison instinct doesn't disappear. You just redirect it toward useful targets. 83. Silence is the space where insight emerges. The constant noise of modern life, external and internal, drowns out the quiet voice of intuition. Wisdom doesn't arrive through effort. It surfaces through stillness. That's why every wisdom tradition emphasizes some form of contemplative practice. The answers you're searching for externally are often already present internally, waiting for enough silence to become audible. 84. Forgiveness is selfish in the best possible way. You don't forgive to be noble or spiritual. You forgive because carrying resentment is exhausting. Anger towards someone who hurt you gives them permanent residence in your mind. Forgiveness is eviction. It's reclaiming mental and emotional real estate. You're not doing them a favor. You're liberating yourself from the weight of perpetual grievance. 85. Vulnerability is strength misunderstood as weakness. Admitting uncertainty, expressing emotion, asking for help, all of these require more courage than projection of invulnerability. The strongest people aren't those who never break. They're those who break, show the pieces, and slowly reassemble themselves while others watch. Vulnerability isn't oversharing. It's honest disclosure of your actual human experience. 86. Perfectionism is fear masquerading as high standards. It's not about excellence. It's about avoiding criticism, rejection, or failure. Perfectionists don't finish projects because completion invites judgment. They revise endlessly, chasing an impossible standard that conveniently never arrives. Perfectionism isn't ambition. It's self-sabotage dressed in the language of quality. Done is better than perfect because done actually exists in the world. 87. Anger is information. It tells you a boundary has been crossed, a value has been violated, or a need has gone unmet. The emotion itself isn't the problem. What you do with it determines whether it becomes destructive or constructive. Anger can fuel necessary change, or it can burn everything down. It's a signal, not a directive. Feel it, decode it, then choose your response consciously. 88. Confidence isn't believing you'll succeed. It's knowing you'll survive failure. Truly confident people aren't delusional about their abilities. They've simply made peace with the possibility of falling short. They've failed before, recovered, and learned that failure isn't fatal. Confidence is trust in your resilience, not certainty about outcomes. It's the knowledge that you can handle whatever happens, not the belief that only good things will. 89. Nostalgia is selective memory designed to comfort, not inform. When you look backward with longing, you're seeing a highlight reel with all the difficulty edited out. The past wasn't better. Your memory of it is kinder than reality was. Nostalgia serves a purpose. It soothes, it connects you to continuity, but it's terrible history. Don't mistake the story you tell about the past for the truth of what actually occurred. 90. Jealousy reveals what you value and what you fear losing. It's information about your priorities dressed in an uncomfortable emotion. Instead of suppressing jealousy, interrogate it. What does this feeling tell you about what matters to you? What insecurity is it highlighting? Jealousy isn't inherently toxic. It's diagnostic. The question is whether you use it for self-awareness or let it curdle into resentment. 91. Your attention is the most valuable resource you possess. Where you direct it shapes your reality more than circumstances ever could. Two people can experience identical situations and construct entirely different lives based solely on what they chose to focus on. Attention isn't passive observation, it's active creation of your subjective world. Guard it accordingly. 92. Regret is the brain's way of learning without repeating mistakes. It feels terrible, but it's evolutionarily essential. Regret means your internal model updated based on consequences. People without regret don't learn from experience. They repeat the same errors indefinitely. The discomfort of regret is the cost of wisdom. Pay it willingly. 93. Love is a verb, not a feeling. The emotion of love is effortless and fleeting. The action of love is deliberate and enduring. Feelings come and go based on neurochemistry and circumstance. Commitment persists through choice. The strongest relationships aren't built on perpetual passion. They're built on consistent, unglamorous acts of showing up. 94. Your inner critic is usually someone else's voice that you internalized. That harsh judgment running on loop in your head probably originated externally. A parent, a teacher, a peer who criticized you during formative years. You absorbed their voice and made it your own. Recognizing this doesn't silence the critic, but it helps you understand it's not objective truth. It's an echo from the past. 95. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action taken despite fear. The bravest people aren't those who feel no anxiety. They're those who feel it fully and move forward anyway. Courage is a practice, not a personality trait. Each time you act despite fear, you strengthen that neural pathway. Bravery is built through repetition, not discovered through luck. 96. Connection requires risk. To be known deeply, you must reveal yourself honestly. To love fully, you must accept the possibility of loss. Every meaningful relationship requires vulnerability, and vulnerability guarantees the potential for pain. The alternative is safety and loneliness. Most people choose the cage because the wilderness feels too dangerous, but you can't connect through walls. 97. Your perception is not reality. It's an interpretation filtered through past experience, current mood, biological state, and cognitive biases. 2. People witness the same event and construct different truths. Humility begins with recognizing that your version of reality is one perspective among many, not objective fact. The map is never the territory. 98. Grief is love with nowhere to go. When you lose someone or something important, the love doesn't disappear. It remains, but its object is gone. That creates profound disorientation. Grief isn't weakness or pathology. It's the natural consequence of having loved deeply. The depth of grief measures the depth of connection. It's the price of love, and it's worth paying. 99. You cannot think your way out of a feeling. Emotions aren't problems to be solved through logic. They're experiences to be felt, acknowledged, and allowed to move through you. Trying to rationalize away feelings only strengthens them. What you resist persists. The fastest way through emotion is through it, not around it. Feel it fully. Then it can release. 100. The mind is not a machine to be optimized. It's a living system that requires rest, play, connection, meaning, and mystery. The more you treat yourself like a productivity unit, the more you'll suffer. You're not broken when you need rest. You're not weak when you need help. You're not failing when you need time. You're human. Act accordingly. This is the hidden blueprint. These are the patterns running beneath every interaction, every choice, every moment of connection or isolation. The mind doesn't play by the rules you are taught. It operates on frequencies most people never tune into. Understanding these patterns won't make life easier, but it will make it clearer. And clarity, even painful clarity, is always better than comfortable delusion. Everyone believes they understand why people act the way they do, but the truth is, the mind works in fascinating and mysterious ways. Every action, behavior, and thought is influenced by complex psychological forces we often don't even notice. Let's dive into some psychological facts that reveal the hidden truths behind human behavior. 1. Your brain is constantly predicting what's going to happen next. The human brain is like a prediction machine. It's constantly taking in information from the environment and using it to anticipate what's next. This process helps you act more efficiently and react faster to your surroundings. When you walk into a room and someone smiles at you, your brain doesn't just perceive that person's facial expression in the present, it's already making a prediction based on your past experiences. It predicts that this person is friendly or that something positive is about to happen, so you respond in kind. This predictive mechanism not only saves mental energy, but also allows us to anticipate threats. The brain's ability to predict based on past events can explain why you sometimes feel like you knew something was going to happen even before it did. It's your brain's way of making the world more understandable and navigable. 2. Your emotions can influence your memory. Memories are not as fixed as they may seem. While we like to think of memories as clear snapshots of past events, they are often influenced by our emotional states at the time of recall. The brain is highly emotional when it comes to storing memories. Events tied to intense emotions, whether positive or negative, tend to be remembered more vividly than neutral events. For instance, if you were extremely happy or sad during a particular moment, your brain is more likely to encode that event with greater detail. However, The emotions that come with the memory can distort it over time. The brain tends to fill in gaps with emotion-laden information, which can make certain memories feel more intense or more important than they might have originally been. This emotional imprint on memories can sometimes cause us to recall events with a sense of nostalgia, or conversely, with regret, even if the facts of the event don't align with how we feel about it now. 3. People tend to remember faces better than names. This is because the brain is specialized in facial recognition. There are specific neural regions, like the fusiform face area, that are dedicated to identifying faces. Over time, humans have evolved to be exceptionally good at distinguishing faces, which was crucial for social bonding and survival. This ability allows us to instantly recognize friends and acquaintances and assess emotional cues from others. However, when it comes to names, our brains rely on different systems for memory that require more effort and cognitive energy. As a result, people often struggle to recall names, especially when meeting a lot of new faces at once. This is why, even if you can recognize someone immediately, you might not recall their name right away. It's not that you're forgetful, it's just the way your brain processes visual information versus verbal information. 4. Your brain can trick you into believing something that isn't true. The brain is designed to make quick decisions based on available information. However, this means it can also fall prey to cognitive biases. For example, the brain has a tendency to believe things that fit its existing beliefs, even when there is no factual basis for those beliefs. The confirmation bias is a perfect example of this. This bias causes us to look for evidence that supports what we already think, ignoring or dismissing information that contradicts our views. This is why it's so difficult to change someone's mind once they've formed an opinion. They're not consciously resisting new information, but their brain is naturally filtering out anything that doesn't align with their preconceptions. This mechanism helped humans survive by making decisions quickly, but in today's complex world, it can sometimes lead to errors in judgment and reasoning. 5. People are more likely to follow the behavior of others when they're uncertain. Humans are inherently social creatures, and we often look to others for guidance when we're unsure about how to behave. This is particularly true in ambiguous situations. The brain naturally seeks social validation and cues from others to make sense of uncertain circumstances. For example, if you're in an unfamiliar place, like a foreign country, and you don't know how to behave, you'll likely look to the locals to guide your actions. This instinct is known as social proof, and it helps individuals fit in with groups and avoid standing out. It's why trends and social movements can spread quickly. People look to others to determine what's acceptable or popular, even if they don't fully understand the rationale behind it. The brain uses social proof as a shortcut to help you make quick decisions without having to process every detail. 6. The halo effect causes us to make sweeping judgments based on first impressions. When we notice one positive trait in a person, whether it's their physical appearance, kindness, or confidence, we often assume they have other positive qualities as well. This is called the halo effect, and it can significantly distort our judgment. For instance, if someone is attractive, we might subconsciously assume they're also smart or friendly, even if we have no evidence to support that assumption. On the flip side, if someone has a negative first impression, we may think they're rude or incompetent, even if their actions don't entirely support that view. The halo effect shows how our brains tend to generalize based on limited information, and it can cause us to overlook other important factors that don't align with our initial impressions. 7. Fear can make your brain more focused. When faced with a threatening or dangerous situation, the brain releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These chemicals sharpen your focus, increase alertness, and prepare your body for fight or flight responses. This reaction, while essential for survival, can also make you more alert and focused on the task at hand. This is why some people perform better under pressure. Fear can block out distractions and make you concentrate intensely on the immediate threat. However, while fear can increase focus, chronic fear or anxiety can have the opposite effect. Over time, prolonged stress can actually impair cognitive function and reduce your ability to make clear decisions. 8. Your brain struggles to differentiate between a real and imagined experience. The power of the mind is extraordinary. When you vividly imagine an experience, whether it's a joyful moment, a stressful situation, or even something as mundane as eating your favorite food, your brain processes it as if it were actually happening. This phenomenon is why athletes use visualization techniques to improve performance. When they imagine performing well, the brain activates similar neural pathways to those used when actually performing the action. The same concept applies to negative experiences. Imagining a stressful event can create a real sense of anxiety and fear, which is why thoughts can sometimes feel like tangible experiences. The brain is not always aware of the difference between what's real and what's imagined, which can have a significant impact on our emotional and physical states. 9. People are more likely to act impulsively when they're tired. When you're tired, your brain doesn't process information as efficiently as it does when you're well rested. Sleep deprivation impairs decision-making by weakening the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational thinking and self-control. This makes it harder to weigh the consequences of your actions, leading to impulsive behaviour. For example, when you're tired, you might make unhealthy food choices, skip a workout, or make a risky decision without considering the long-term effects. That's why experts recommend getting enough sleep, not just for physical health, but also for mental clarity and emotional regulation. 10. People are more likely to remember the beginning and the end of an experience. This phenomenon, known as the serial position effect, refers to the tendency to remember the first and last parts of an event more vividly than the middle. This bias has profound implications for everything from job interviews to speeches to relationships. If you start strong and finish well, people are more likely to remember the experience overall, even if the middle is forgettable. This is why your opening statement in a presentation is crucial. It sets the tone, and if you finish with something memorable, you'll leave a lasting impression. 11. Your brain tends to focus on negative information more than positive. This is known as negativity bias, a natural tendency for your brain to give more weight to negative experiences than positive ones. From an evolutionary standpoint, this bias helped our ancestors focus on threats or dangers in order to survive. As a result, negative experiences, whether it's a harsh comment or a stressful event, tend to stick in your memory longer than positive experiences. This bias affects your everyday life, making you more sensitive to criticism than compliments. It's why one negative comment can overshadow numerous positive ones, and why bad events often feel more significant than good ones. Overcoming this bias requires conscious effort to shift focus to the positive, but doing so can improve mental resilience and well-being. 12. Your brain can get addicted to stress. While we often think of addiction as being linked to substances like alcohol or drugs, the brain can also become addicted to stress. The rush of adrenaline and cortisol during stressful moments can feel addictive, making you crave that intensity even when it's harmful. People who thrive on high-pressure situations, or those who constantly face deadlines, may feel a sense of exhilaration from stress. Over time, this can lead to unhealthy patterns of behavior, where the body becomes so used to being in a state of heightened stress that it becomes difficult to feel relaxed. Learning to manage stress and finding balance is crucial to breaking this cycle and protecting mental health. 13. The human brain can't focus on multiple tasks at once. This is a common misconception. While you may think you're multitasking, your brain is actually switching back and forth between tasks. This switching takes cognitive resources and reduces efficiency, which can lead to mistakes. When you're juggling multiple tasks, you're dividing your attention across them, and as a result, each task suffers in terms of quality and focus. Studies have shown that multitasking can even lower IQ temporarily and increase mental fatigue. Instead of multitasking, focusing on one thing at a time can increase productivity and improve performance across the board. The brain works best when it can dedicate full attention to one task rather than splitting its focus. 14. Your brain has a limited capacity for decision-making. The paradox of choice explains why having too many options can actually lead to stress and indecision. The brain has a finite amount of cognitive resources, and constantly making decisions drains these resources. As a result, when faced with too many choices, the brain becomes overwhelmed, leading to a decision-making paralysis or the decision to opt for the easiest option. This is why people often feel overwhelmed by long shopping lists or complicated tasks. They have to use a significant amount of cognitive energy to make decisions, which can lead to exhaustion and poor choices. To combat this, reducing the number of options or simplifying choices can enhance clarity and improve decision-making. 15. People tend to remember faces more than names. This is due to the specialized processing systems in the brain designed for face recognition. Our brains are equipped with areas specifically dedicated to recognizing faces, making it easier to spot a familiar face in a crowd, even after a long time. In contrast, names don't have the same specialized neural systems, and they require more cognitive effort to recall. While faces are processed in the fusiform face area, names are stored and retrieved from the brain's memory systems, which are not as specialized. This is why you can easily recognize a person you've met before, but remembering their name takes more time and effort. 16. People make snap judgments based on appearance. The brain is constantly making quick judgments about others, often within milliseconds of meeting someone. This phenomenon, known as thin slicing, is when the brain makes rapid decisions based on limited information, such as someone's facial expression, body language, or voice tone. These snap judgments often occur unconsciously and can shape the way we interact with people, sometimes even before we know anything about them. While this can be useful in making quick decisions in social situations, it can also lead to biases and misjudgments based on appearance alone, which is why it's important to challenge first impressions and give people a chance to reveal more about themselves. 17. Your brain responds more to negative feedback than positive feedback. This is another example of the brain's negativity bias, where negative experiences, such as criticism or failure, activate stronger emotional responses and are stored more vividly in memory. In contrast, positive feedback tends to be processed in a more neutral or less intense way. The reason for this is rooted in survival instincts. Negative feedback or criticism could represent a threat, so the brain prioritizes it in order to prevent future mistakes. This can be frustrating, as we tend to focus on our flaws or failures rather than our successes. To improve resilience, it's important to consciously focus on the positive and balance negative feedback with affirmations of success. 18. Humans are wired to be social creatures. The brain is hardwired to seek connection with others, as social bonding has played a critical role in human survival. The release of oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, helps foster trust, empathy, and attachment between individuals. This is why social interactions, whether they're with family, friends, or even strangers, can lift your mood and improve your mental health. The need for social connection is so strong that people who are isolated or lack close relationships often experience symptoms similar to physical pain. This underscores the importance of nurturing social bonds for both emotional and physical well-being. 19. The brain's default mode network is active when you're doing nothing. When your mind is at rest, like during daydreaming or idle moments, the brain's default mode network, DMN, is activated. This network is involved in processes like mind-wandering, self-reflection, and social cognition. While the DMN is often associated with idle moments, it's actually important for problem-solving and creative thinking. Many people have moments of insight or come up with their best ideas when they're not focused on anything specific. This is why sometimes the best ideas come to you when you're doing something mundane, like walking or taking a shower. Your brain is allowing itself to make connections that it doesn't have the mental space for when it's focused on tasks. 20. People can pick up on micro-expressions that reveal hidden emotions. Micro-expressions are tiny, involuntary facial expressions that occur within a fraction of a second. These expressions can reveal hidden emotions, such as anger, fear, or disgust, even when someone is trying to hide them. The human brain is highly attuned to these subtle cues, often recognizing them without conscious awareness. This is why you can sometimes sense when someone is lying or feeling uncomfortable, even if they're trying to appear calm or composed. Being able to read these micro-expressions gives humans an evolutionary advantage, allowing us to detect potential threats or deception in social situations. 21. Your brain can trick you into thinking something is familiar. This is known as the familiarity heuristic, and it happens when you perceive something or someone as familiar simply because it resembles something you've encountered before. The brain tends to make these quick judgments to conserve energy and avoid overthinking. However, this can also lead to false memories or mistaken recognition. For example, you might feel that someone is familiar because their face or voice reminds you of a friend or family member, even though you've never met them. The brain's reliance on familiarity can be helpful for quick decision-making, but it can also lead to misidentifications or biases. 22. Your brain is constantly judging the emotions of others. Humans are exceptional at reading other people's emotions, even when they don't speak a word. The brain uses both conscious and subconscious processes to decode facial expressions, body language, and vocal tones to determine how someone is feeling. This ability to quickly assess others' emotional states is essential for social interactions, as it helps you respond appropriately in different situations. The mirror neurons in your brain allow you to feel empathy and react to another person's emotional state almost instantly, which is why you can often feel someone's pain or joy just by observing them. 23. Stress can actually improve your performance in the short term. Stress isn't always harmful. In small doses, stress can sharpen your focus and enhance your performance, especially in high-stakes situations. This is because stress activates the fight-or-flight response, releasing adrenaline and cortisol that heighten your alertness, increase your heart rate, and prepare your body for action. This heightened state of arousal can help you perform well during presentations, exams, or sports events. However, chronic stress can have detrimental effects on the brain, leading to burnout, anxiety, and physical health issues. It's all about balance. Stress can be useful for motivation, but long-term exposure can overwhelm the system. 24. The brain needs downtime to function optimally. While it may seem counterintuitive, the brain is not built for constant work or stimulation. Just like the body, the brain needs rest and recovery to function properly. Studies show that taking breaks, especially in the form of naps, can significantly improve focus, memory, and learning. The brain uses downtime to consolidate memories and integrate information. Without rest, cognitive function diminishes and productivity decreases. This is why taking short breaks throughout the day and getting adequate sleep is crucial for maintaining mental sharpness and overall brain health. 25. People tend to seek social validation from others. Humans have an innate desire to be liked and accepted by others, which is why we often seek validation in the form of compliments, likes on social media, or approval from peers. The brain's dopamine system rewards us when we receive positive feedback, which reinforces the desire for social acceptance. This need for validation is so strong that it can influence decisions, behaviours, and self-worth. While it's normal to want approval, too much reliance on external validation can lead to anxiety and insecurity. True self-esteem comes from internal validation, not just from what others think of you. The human mind is an endlessly fascinating puzzle, constantly shaping the way we interact with the world and with each other. While we like to think of ourselves as rational beings, the truth is that much of our behaviour is shaped by hidden psychological forces, many of which we don't even recognise. Here are some psychological facts that reveal the intricate workings of our brains, offering a deeper understanding of how we think, feel, and act. 1. The brain craves certainty and struggles with uncertainty. Your brain is wired to seek out certainty, primarily because uncertainty triggers anxiety. When faced with unfamiliar or ambiguous situations, the brain becomes stressed, leading to a sense of discomfort. This reaction stems from our evolutionary history. Uncertainty in the environment often meant danger, and knowing what to expect helped our ancestors survive. In modern life, uncertainty can come in many forms, whether it's about the future, relationships, or decisions at work, and the brain will often attempt to reduce this anxiety by seeking out clear answers. This explains why people may often resort to making quick, sometimes incorrect decisions to avoid the discomfort of not knowing what comes next. 2. Your brain is hardwired to see faces, even in random patterns. Humans have a unique ability to recognize faces, a skill that is so crucial for social interactions and survival that your brain has specialized areas dedicated to it. These areas are known as the fusiform face area, which allows you to recognize and process faces quickly and accurately. In fact, your brain is so attuned to faces that it can sometimes see faces even where they don't exist. This phenomenon is called pareidolia. For example, you might see a face in the clouds or in a random arrangement of objects. This is the brain's way of processing information that it finds most relevant. Faces are one of the first things we look for in the environment, as recognizing faces quickly can have life or death implications. 3. People tend to act more impulsively when they're tired. Sleep deprivation has a profound effect on your ability to make sound decisions. When you're tired, your brain's prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for rational thought, planning, and impulse control, becomes less effective. As a result, you're more likely to make hasty, emotional decisions without fully considering the consequences. This explains why people often act impulsively when they're sleep deprived, whether it's indulging in unhealthy food, skipping a workout, or making snap judgments in difficult situations. Chronic sleep deprivation can lead to long-term cognitive issues, affecting everything from memory to emotional regulation. 4. The brain processes negative emotions more intensely than positive ones. The negativity bias is a well-documented psychological phenomenon that explains why negative events tend to stick in our minds longer than positive ones. From an evolutionary standpoint, our brains are more sensitive to negative experiences because they often signal potential threats or danger, which required immediate attention and action. This bias helped early humans survive in hostile environments by prioritizing threats over rewards. Today, this tendency can lead to disproportionate emotional reactions to criticism, setbacks, or negative events. For instance, a single criticism can overshadow a dozen compliments, making it harder to focus on the positive aspects of life. 5. Your memory is influenced by the context in which you recall it. Memory isn't a perfect recording of events. It's often malleable and influenced by context, emotions, and the passage of time. When you recall a memory, your brain doesn't replay it like a video. It reconstructs it based on fragments of sensory information, emotions, and your current state of mind. This is why memories can change over time. New information, even subtle suggestions or social cues, can reshape the way you remember things. For example, if you're told by a friend that a particular event was fun, you might begin to remember it as more enjoyable than you initially did. This phenomenon also explains why two people can experience the same event and have completely different memories of it, influenced by their emotions, perceptions, and post-event discussions. 6. People's behaviour can be heavily influenced by the presence of others. Humans are naturally social creatures, and our behaviour is often shaped by those around us. This is especially true when we're in groups or in the presence of authority figures. Social influence can take many forms: conformity, peer pressure, and obedience. Research on group behaviour shows that people often change their actions to align with the group's norms, even if they don't fully agree with them. This is called conformity, and it happens because the brain seeks social acceptance and fears rejection. In situations where there's ambiguity or uncertainty, people are more likely to look to others for guidance, which often leads to groupthink, where the desire for harmony in a group leads to irrational or dysfunctional decision-making. 7. The brain thrives on novelty, but also needs routine. While the brain enjoys novel experiences because new things stimulate dopamine production, which is tied to motivation and pleasure, it also benefits from routines. In fact, when you develop a routine, the brain experiences reduced cognitive load because it doesn't have to work as hard to make decisions. Daily routines free up mental energy, allowing you to focus on more complex tasks. However, the brain can become complacent with too much routine, which can lead to a feeling of mental stagnation or boredom. This is why it's important to balance the benefits of routine with occasional novel experiences, which stimulate creativity, learning, and excitement. 8. People often underestimate the impact of their social circle on their behaviour. The people around you significantly shape your behaviour, attitudes, and even your health. Research shows that individuals are more likely to adopt the habits, attitudes, and lifestyles of their social circle than they realise. This is due to social contagion, where behaviours spread within a network of people, much like a virus. If you're surrounded by individuals who have healthy habits, you're more likely to adopt those habits yourself. Conversely, if your social circle engages in unhealthy behaviours, you're more likely to follow suit, even if you're not consciously aware of it. This underscores the importance of choosing your social environment wisely. It can be one of the most powerful influences on your health and happiness. 9. Your brain prefers easy-to-process information. Humans are cognitive misers. Our brains prefer to conserve mental energy whenever possible. This means that when we're faced with complex or ambiguous information, we tend to simplify it in order to process it more easily. For example, when you read a headline or see an advertisement, your brain automatically reduces the complexity of the information to fit your existing knowledge. This is why catchy slogans, visuals, and simple messages are so effective in advertising and communication. When information is easy to understand, the brain processes it more efficiently, and we're more likely to accept it without questioning it. 10. People are more likely to stick with a decision when they've invested time or effort into it. This psychological phenomenon is known as effort justification. When you invest significant time, energy, or money into something, your brain tends to place a higher value on it, even if the outcome is less than ideal. This is why people who spend hours building something or working on a project are more likely to see it as valuable or worthwhile, even if the result doesn't live up to expectations. Effort justification can be seen in everything from relationships to consumer behaviour to personal projects. The more effort you put into something, the more you tend to justify and rationalise its worth. 11. Your brain is biased toward visual information. Humans process visual stimuli significantly faster than auditory or textual information. In fact, studies have shown that the brain can process visual input in as little as 13 milliseconds. This rapid processing is one of the reasons why visual content, such as images, videos, or even body language, has a much greater impact than words alone. Visual stimuli are processed in the visual cortex, which is designed to quickly decode and interpret images. In contrast, verbal or textual information takes longer to process, as it involves more complex cognitive systems. This explains why people are often drawn to pictures or infographics over lengthy explanations or articles. 12. Stress can be contagious in a group setting. If one person in a group becomes stressed or anxious, it can quickly spread to others. This phenomenon, known as emotional contagion, happens because the brain is wired to pick up on emotional cues from those around us. The brain's mirror neurons allow us to empathize with others by mimicking their emotional state. This is why you can often sense when someone else is anxious or stressed, even if they haven't said anything. In a group setting, if one person expresses fear or frustration, it can trigger similar emotions in others, creating a collective sense of stress. This is why team leaders or group members with high emotional intelligence can play such an important role in managing group dynamics. 13. Your brain uses context to fill in the blanks of a conversation. When you're talking to someone, your brain doesn't process every word they say in isolation. Instead, it uses context, everything from body language to previous conversations, to fill in the gaps. This is why we can understand phrases like, "He's a little under the weather," even if we don't know the exact details. The brain takes cues from the broader context and infers meaning from past experiences and social norms. This helps us make sense of ambiguous or incomplete information in real-time conversations. However, it also means that misunderstandings can occur if the context is unclear or if the listener's expectations don't match the speaker's intent. Misinterpretations happen because our brains are constantly making assumptions about the meaning of words, even when they're not explicitly stated. 14. People tend to feel a sense of control when they have choices, but too many options can lead to anxiety. The brain likes having control over its environment, and having choices gives you the sense that you're in charge of your actions. However, too many options can actually paralyze decision-making, leading to what's called choice overload. When you're presented with a large number of choices, your brain has to work harder to evaluate each one, which can lead to confusion and dissatisfaction. This phenomenon is often seen in scenarios like shopping, choosing a restaurant, or even choosing a career path. When there are too many options, the brain becomes overwhelmed and can end up feeling anxious or dissatisfied, even after making a decision. Interestingly, people tend to be happier when they have just a few options to choose from, as it reduces the pressure and makes the decision-making process feel more manageable. 15. Your brain doesn't fully form until you're in your 20s. The brain is constantly developing, and it doesn't reach full maturity until a person is in their mid to late 20s. One of the last areas to fully develop is the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and understanding the long-term consequences of actions. This is why teenagers and young adults often make decisions that seem impulsive or reckless to older generations. They simply lack the neurological development needed to fully understand the future impact of their actions. This period of development also helps explain why young adults are more likely to engage in risky behaviours, like experimenting with substances or making spontaneous decisions, while older individuals tend to think more carefully before acting. 16. People are more likely to remember things that are emotionally significant. The brain prioritizes emotionally charged experiences because they are deemed more important for survival. Events that trigger strong emotions, whether joy, fear, anger, or love, are stored more deeply in memory than neutral events. This is why you remember a wedding, a death, or a traumatic event with far greater detail than an average day. The brain releases dopamine, norepinephrine, and cortisol depending on the emotion, which help lock those memories in place. The heightened emotional state during significant events makes the memory vivid and harder to forget. This emotional connection also helps shape how we narrate our own life stories, often focusing more on the emotional peaks and valleys rather than the mundane moments in between. 17. People are more likely to conform when they feel insecure or uncertain. The need for social acceptance is deeply ingrained in human nature. When people feel unsure about how to behave in a particular social context, they often look to others for cues on how to act. This is known as social conformity. The brain tends to follow social norms when we feel uncertain about a situation, which is why peer pressure and groupthink can be so influential. For example, when you enter a new group or workplace, the brain subconsciously evaluates the behavior of others and adapts accordingly. This drive to conform helps us fit into social groups and avoid social rejection, but it can also lead to uncritical decision-making, especially when it comes to sensitive or controversial issues. 18. Your brain is constantly assessing risk, even in situations where you feel safe. Humans are always on the lookout for potential threats. It's part of our survival instinct. This constant risk assessment occurs even when we feel comfortable and safe. For example, while walking down the street, your brain is subconsciously scanning your environment for any signs of danger, like someone walking too close behind you or a suspicious-looking object. The brain's amygdala, which processes fear and potential threats, is always at work, even in neutral or relaxing situations. This is why certain sounds or situations, like hearing sirens or witnessing an argument, can suddenly spike your heart rate or make you feel uneasy. Your brain doesn't wait for you to consciously recognize the danger, it reacts instinctively. 19. People tend to overestimate their control over random events. The brain has a tendency to believe it can control events that are, in reality, random. This is called the illusion of control. It's why people throw salt over their shoulders after spilling some, or why gamblers believe that certain superstitions can affect their odds of winning. The brain craves control, and in an uncertain world, it looks for patterns that don't exist. This illusion helps the brain feel more secure and less anxious about uncontrollable factors. However, this overestimation can lead to poor decision-making, especially in situations involving chance. It's why people often engage in behaviours that they believe will influence outcomes when, in fact, those outcomes are largely random or outside their control. 20. Dopamine plays a crucial role in motivation, not just pleasure. Dopamine is widely known as the pleasure chemical, but it's also crucial in motivating you to pursue rewards. The brain releases dopamine not just when you receive a reward, but also when you expect a reward or when you're working toward a goal. It's why you feel motivated to complete tasks, pursue goals, and seek out new experiences. The anticipation of a reward triggers the release of dopamine, which creates feelings of excitement and motivation to keep moving forward. This is why people who set and work toward clear goals often feel a surge of energy and satisfaction as they approach those goals. Without dopamine, tasks would feel less rewarding and motivation would decrease. 21. People are more likely to act based on how something is framed. The way information is presented significantly influences how we perceive and respond to it. This is known as framing effect. The way a message is framed can change people's choices and decisions, even when the underlying facts are the same. For example, people tend to prefer a product labelled as having a 90% success rate over one with a 10% failure rate, even though both phrases describe the same outcome. The brain is highly sensitive to how things are framed, making us more susceptible to marketing tactics and persuasive messaging. This psychological principle is why advertisements, political speeches, and media outlets often frame issues in specific ways to influence public opinion or behaviour. 22. Your brain interprets silence as discomfort or a request to speak. Silence can be incredibly uncomfortable for many people, especially in social situations. The brain experiences silence as a gap in communication that needs to be filled, and this discomfort often leads people to speak out during awkward pauses. In conversation, if someone remains silent, your brain often interprets this as a prompt to continue or to offer your own thoughts. This is why people tend to over-explain things in group settings, or why there's a rush to fill pauses with words. Silence, while powerful and essential for processing thoughts, is often viewed as an opportunity for the brain to keep the flow of social interaction moving. 23. The brain is constantly rewiring itself based on experiences. Neuroplasticity is a remarkable property of the brain that allows it to adapt, learn, and change. Every time you learn something new, encounter a new experience, or practice a skill, your brain rewires itself to accommodate that new information. This means that, even as you age, the brain continues to form new connections and strengthen old ones, which is why cognitive exercises and learning are so beneficial. While the brain is highly adaptable, it can also reinforce bad habits if you're not conscious of the behaviours you're cultivating. The brain's ability to rewire itself means that we are never too old to learn or change. 24. The halo effect makes you judge someone based on one positive trait. The halo effect occurs when you assume that because someone is good at one thing, they must be good at other things as well. For example, if a person is attractive, you might assume they are also smart, friendly, or talented, even if there is no evidence to support this. The brain tends to overgeneralize traits based on first impressions or one standout feature. This cognitive bias is not limited to attractiveness. It can apply to other positive traits like competence or likability. While this can sometimes be helpful in making quick judgments, it also leads to unfair assumptions and the overlooking of important information. 25. Your environment can impact your mental and physical health more than you think. The environment you live in plays a significant role in your mental and physical well-being. Whether it's the design of your home, the people you interact with, or even the weather, your surroundings have a profound effect on your mood, productivity, and health. For example, studies have shown that spending time in nature can lower stress levels, improve focus, and boost overall mood. Similarly, a cluttered, chaotic environment can increase anxiety and decrease your ability to focus. The brain thrives in organized, calming environments, but it's constantly processing the sensory input it receives from the world around it, which influences everything from sleep patterns to energy levels.